What's going on, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy. We are still in the thick of going through the division-by-division breakdowns. Tonight will be the NFC East, and that will do it for the NFC. We'll start with the AFC side next week. So I haven't gotten to your favorite team yet. Don't worry. We'll get there, and we'll get there before your fantasy redraft leagues. But first and foremost, we have a lot of exciting things going on with the Fantasy Holics. As you know, that's part of our affiliation with this podcast is the Fantasy Holics, but we aren't just a podcast network. No, we're on Facebook. We got Twitter. We are launching our website this offseason as well. A lot of fun things going on. We're on YouTube. We're doing it all, but even more so, we're happy now that we got an opportunity to partner with Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you haven't been to Underdog Fantasy, let me tell you, it's the way that I love to do some of these fantasy sports. It's not just being able to draft and do it with your buddies, but if you love best ball, which is basically you're drafting your team and you get the best amount of points every single week. Personally, one of the favorite things that I have doing is the draft. It is the most fun part. You feel like you learn the most, and it's so much more exciting to zig when you zag. But after that, it's very, very challenging to keep up with so many leagues if you love to draft like I do. So jump on over and do best ball. What do they do there? You draft, then they set it and forget it. They will make sure that you have the most points scored that week and every week going forward for the entire league. It's a blast to do. It's really fun, and you really get to kind of flex your draft knowledge because nobody's picking anybody up off of the waivers. But on top of that, they've got even more stuff. If you love just going week to week and wondering, is DeAndre Hopkins, now that he's on the Tennessee Titans, week one, going to have, more than 5 receptions? You can go ahead and put something down on that. You can figure out if you think that Mahomes or Josh Allen, which is going to have a better season. You can go through that as well. And now you can do it on our dime. That's right. We have now partnered with Underdog Fantasy, and if you go to their site and it's your first deposit and you enter the promo code HOLICS, HOLICS, that's HOLICS in the promo code, we'll give you an extra $100 to play with, okay? So get on over there, sign up, have some fun, play around with it, do some best ball and do a little bit of everything else. You will enjoy it, I promise. Now that being said, we're going to continue in to the defensive side of the ball because that's what we do best here at Defense Wins Fantasy. As I said, we are going into the final division, the NFC East. And I'll tell you what, we're going to start with the Dallas Cowboys. Get them going right off the bat. And I'm going to be honest, my breakout player, you're just going to have to hear me out on it. It's not going to be shocking. It's not going to be world-beating. It's Micah Parsons. But it's Micah Parsons because of the offseason news that we've been talking about, him going strictly to a defensive end position. First off, him having D-line eligibility is the key, right? Having the ability to put him in that defensive line spot is where he is going to get the most bang for his buck. I like the safeties on this team. I like a few of the other players, but Parsons is just the guy. We have to talk about him. Micah is for sure going to be listed as a D lineman. And if he still plays that hybrid role, even though they say, well, he's going to play solely defensive end, I don't buy it because he's just too good putting him wherever they need him at. But if they keep putting him in the hybrid role, he's going to be dominant in that D-line position. He's going to get tackles like a kind of mid-tier linebacker, 60 to 90 tackles. But then you're going to get many, many more pass rush opportunities. Easily could get into the 15 sack range this year. As the D lineman, he should easily finish in the top 10, more likely top 5. My biggest concern has been with him not getting enough tackles to compete with the linebackers. But as a D lineman, he's going to be the cream of the crop when it comes to the tackle situation. Outside of maybe Max Crosby, because that dude was killing it tackles last year. He's going to destroy the competition. And the reason I put him as a breakout is because you have to understand what it means to have that D lineman eligibility and how much more valuable he will be in this role. Moving on to my bust, and this is rookie D tackle Mazi Smith, first-round draft pick. He hasn't had a lot of buzz, right, so far. A little bit of a surprise first-round pick in the first place, but anything that you hear needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Mazi should be a solid player, but he's not going to be at the level of fantasy relevant. If you are drafting D tackles, he'd have to be just dynasty wise at this point. This year he's not going to do it. And for him to be relevant in D lineman leagues, he'd have to be over the top 9-10 sacks relevant or somehow is in the 60 tackle club. It's not going to happen as a rookie. Mazi will be a mediocre if it's just D tackles he's compared to. He's not going to be able to compete with the D line eligibility situation if you just play D line. Stay away from him. First round talent makes people think, oh, well, this ain't the guy, okay? It's not his game. I think he'll be a solid pro, but rookie year, I'm not touching him. So my player to watch is one I've talked about this offseason. This is Deron Bland, nickel cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. He was a man on fire last year. When he took over for Jordan Lewis's injury, he had 5 picks and 54 tackles in the back end of last year. Just destroying quarterbacks' hearts out there with those 5 interceptions. But he's in my players to watch and not my breakouts because I don't know what the Cowboys are going to do with him comparative to Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis is coming back from a Liz Frank injury. Will he hold on to the job, or will it be Deron Bland's job to lose? Also, Liz Frank injuries have a very high percentage of re-injury. They kind of have this surgery. A lot of times it gets hurt again. You have the surgery again, and it's never an issue again. I'm not a doctor, but that's just kind of how these work. So, Jordan Lewis is also starting the year on the PUP right now, which helps Bland get more playing time to earn that spot more. And if Bland can keep the starting role, he'd be my breakout player on this team. But right now, it's too foggy to really understand what's going on with this situation. But if I was you, I would go out and pick up Deron Bland and hold. And maybe even if you have an IR spot and it shows Jordan Lewis is IR eligible, pick him up, throw him on there, and wait and see what happens when we get to the start of the season. But Deron Bland, the way he played at the end of the last year, you can't ignore that kind of talent and that kind of fantasy firepower that you could have on your defense. Next team we're going to talk about is the Washington Commanders. Now, my breakout player is Montez Sweat, defensive end. Another solid year last year for Sweat, who finished second on the Commanders in sacks with 8. He combined that with 46 tackles, so solid tackle number for DN. He's been very consistent, like really consistent with his stat lines. So if we forget about the injury-shortened 2021, here's his tackle stats the other 3 years. 50, 45, 46. And his sack numbers have been 7, 9, and 8, respectively. He's been a solid D end in his career, but he's never been getting into that top tier. But this is a contract year. Him and Chase Young are both playing for contracts. And they have double D tackles in the inside to help them avoid the double teams. This is a great D line if Chase Young can get back to his former glory. But I think that this is a year that Sweat jumps into the double-digit sack range and bumps up closer to maybe 60 tackles. High-end DN2 is where I have him projected. I think that he gets to that probably ceiling of 12, 13 sacks this year. But if he can up those tackle numbers, I see him being extremely relevant in our leagues. And as I said, very high-end defensive end 2 for your team. My bust player is last year's darling, Daron Payne, D-tackle. Big D got paid last offseason. I mean, he had a great 2022, and he got 4 years, $90 million coming off that 11.5 sack season, which he also added 64 tackles to. D-tackle-wise, that's good numbers. But you look deeper into it, that 11.5 sacks was more than his prior 3 years combined. So sack regression is coming. And pair that with him being in that contract year, getting that money, now he can kind of take it easy. And I'm not saying that he will, but I'm saying that I think he's going to take a big step back this year to the tune of a low D tackle too. I personally don't even think he's going to be the highest scoring defensive tackle when push comes to shove at the end of this year on his own team. That's going to be Jonathan Allen, who's been a much more high-performing, consistent player than Daron Payne. So now we move to the player to watch. And this one was tough because I just don't know how I feel about him. And that's Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback, first-round draft pick of the Washington Commanders. And normally I get it. Rookie cornerbacks are normally my jam. This guy has me concerned. On one hand, he's 6'1". That's a nice number, 166 pounds. Whoa, that's not good. Thin as a rail this guy is. But on the other hand, he had 14 interceptions, with 6 of those going to the house at Mississippi. He's got really impressive ball skills, really great job catching the ball, and then he's electric with the ball in his hands. But he's 6'1", 166 pounds. Is he going to get beat up in the NFL by players? Will he be able to outmuscle these NFL wide receivers? It's what I'm unsure of. This is where I struggle with him. This is why he's in my players to watch. To me, it's a risk I'm willing to take late in redrafts and possibly in rookies if it's 4th round or later. He's going to get an opportunity to start, but will it translate into fantasy points? I'm not completely sold. I worry about the injury risk. I worry about him attacking the ball rather than the wide receiver, so he gets burned and doesn't get the tackle. That's the worst thing that can happen as far as fantasy is concerned. Well, really, honestly, real life's terrible too. It's just a bit of a wait and see. I said there's the thresholds that I'll take, and we'll see what goes from there. But Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback for the Washington Commanders, is my player to watch. It's a tough one. Then we move on to the Eagles. The Super Bowl runner-ups. A lot of changes on the defense this season for the Eagles. A lot of them. That leads for my breakout player, last year's 3rd-round draft pick, Nakobe Dean, linebacker, to take the wheel and run this defense. And I told you last year, he was my bust player for the Eagles. I told you to not expect much out of him, that he was going to be a guy that had a second-year breakout as linebacker. I said that 2023 would be his breakout campaign, and here I am keeping my word. But he has done all of the work to prove me right so far. Granted, I know we haven't played this year, but all signs point to go time. He's got the green dot on his helmet. He's calling the plays. And in the one game that he got any sense of playing time last year, he had 6 total tackles. In that any sense of playing time was 15 snaps. Just, you're getting a tackle almost every other snap of the ball. When you look at it that way, he's all over the field. He's fast, he's athletic, and he's smart. He has all the ability in the world to finish as a top 10 linebacker this year. That being said, I do project him to finish at linebacker 10 on the season. But I would not be surprised if he outperforms that. Not in the least bit. There is a bit of some injury concern from college, but they let him get healthy. They rested him up. He looked good in very minuscule time last year because why? The Eagles play their linebackers 95+% individual linebackers, which is another thing you need to look at. The snap percentages for some of these teams are more rotational, not the Eagles when it comes to their middle linebackers. Nakobe Dean will be on the field as much as he's physically able to be on the field. And that's going to lead to a lot of fantasy points. Now, my bust player is one of the D linemen on this team that had just a stellar performance as a whole, this D line did. But it's Brandon Graham, defensive end. I've been a Brandon Graham fan since he came out of Michigan back in 2010. And his 11-sack season this last year was just awesome to watch. But this D-line in general was outstanding last year. And they're just not going to be able to repeat that level of greatness that they had, especially when it comes to sacking the quarterback. Graham, who's now 35 years old, will not be repeating this grand performance that he had. Let's just be honest. He's not going to do it. So don't get your hopes up. People looking at last year's stat lines, people trying to compare what they're going to do this year compared to last year, are going to be the guys that grab a Brandon Graham. Do I think he's going to be in the rotation? Absolutely. But it'll be challenging to figure out when he's a good player or not. When you look at the sack numbers that he had last year, he's been in the league 13 years, and last year was 1/7 of his entire sack production. And even last year, with this great sack number of 11 sacks, he had 8 games where he scored less than 6 points a game, including 2 complete goose eggs. This is a classic situation of where the end of the year stats look much better than the week-to-week consistency if you dive deeper into it. It's the kind of guy that's going to give you headaches, and then you're going to bench him, and then he'll probably have an okay game, and you'll be like, crap, I need to put him back in there, and then it's just the cycle that you're going to be in the entire season. Let somebody else pull their hair out. You draft somebody else. And maybe that somebody else is our player to watch, defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Now, I personally love this guy, but I also think that the off-the-field issues are something to be worried about. When push comes to shove, though, talent wins out, and this guy has it in spades. Carter will be lining up next to Jordan Davis, his old running buddy, taking over the role of Javon Hargrave, and is surrounded by seasoned NFL defensive line talent. As we just talked about, a guy like Brandon Graham. 13 years in the league, just an ultimate professional. He should be able to make an immediate impact, and the impact should be in the form of sacks. But he is in my players to watch category because of the off-the-field stuff. Obviously, the car wreck incident is a concern. Another concern that is not to be overlooked is the fact that he was overweight at his pro day and had an absolute poor performance. And where is his headspace at the start of the season? These are all valid questions that you should be concerned about and should be asking. But at the end of the day, are you willing to take a risk on this guy? I am. Because D tackles that can rush the quarterback are very, very few and far between. And if this guy can become a Warren Sapp-esque D tackle, you've hit it. You've hit the lottery for at least a 5-year span with this guy. So Jalen Carter, my player to watch on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the final team we're going to be talking about tonight is the Giants. And we're going to start with the linebacker, Bobby Okereke. Leaving the Colts for a big money contract with the Giants, it's safe to say that the Giants feel like Bobby's their guy. He's also coming off a 151 tackle season with the Colts. I have him as a breakout player. That's going to be tough to top. It really is. But being the guy has its perks. I expect a bit more big play from this dude. Last year was the first year that he hasn't had an interception in his career. I tend to see that we'll have some positive regression back on that. I also expect that his solo tackle numbers will go up from 99. He got a lot of help from his 52 assisted tackles last year. And I think that if he can get that 120 into the solos, if your league scores solos more than assists, which they should, then it's going to be even more valuable to have Bobby next year or this year. And with the money that they paid him, it's not like he's a bubble player that might not start or might get benched. He is the dude, and I expect him to finish around linebacker 12 this season. And he'll be consistent. Week in, week out, you can count on the numbers. Because that's his game. It's a consistency game. But you throw a few more big plays in there, and you got some week-winning games from Bobby Okereke, linebacker for the Giants, my breakout player. Next player is the bust player. This one was tough. And it might be tough to hear, but welcome to Seth's therapy session. This is Kayvon Thibodeau, defensive end. He is my bust player for the Giants this year. Kayvon came on strong at the end of last year after being banged up in preseason, really by a BS low cut block that got him hurt. The IDP fantasy world has their eyes locked in on this kid. What's not to like? Big, athletic, came out of Oregon and was just the guy that you wanted to see. He's got it all, the capability in the world. But I think that people will be upset with his performance given his current ADP, which is defensive end 15. I think he will take a step forward this year. He had 4 sacks last year, but I feel like his ceiling will be right at 9 sacks. And he doesn't get enough tackles to counteract a single sack digit number. If you're going to get less tackles, you've got to get more sacks. And if you're not getting the sacks, then you're going to be a disappointment more weeks than you are a positive player on your team. I love the talent. I love the future. Just not in on this year. Especially when you look at the draft costs that you're going to take. Dynasty-wise, maybe get your hands on him. But personally, as I just stated, I think I'd rather wait a few weeks into the season and see if you can get a little bit more of a discount than the hype train that's been rolling down the tracks with him this year. That brings us to our player to watch. And it's another defensive end, Azeez Ojulari for the Giants. And listen, I've talked about him at the end of last year. I've talked about him during this offseason. Kayvon may be titled as a bust this year, but he will be relevant. Azeez could have been my second breakout player. Coming into his 3rd year in the league, he had 8 sacks his rookie year. Then he got hurt opening week and didn't come back until October 2nd of last year. So what did he do? From that point on, he got a half sack or more in every game that he played. So he had 5.5 sacks in 5 games. And they rested him in week 18 for the playoffs. This dude can get to the quarterback. Natural talent to do it. He's quick off the ball. And when you look at Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Leonard Williams on this D-line, he's the least known name. Look for a big surge at the start of the year with sacks for Azeez. Maybe they start trying to double team him. Maybe it doesn't work. But this guy's going to come out of the gates on fire. I expect probably in the first 5 games of the season, we're going to have 3.5 sacks. And if that's something that you like to see out of your DN, some sacks, then Azeez Ojulari, defensive end, is a guy that you should be targeting. And here's the thing. Kayvon Thibodeau DN 15. Aziz, in some leagues, might not be drafted, but he's definitely well into the 20s, maybe into the 30s when it comes to defensive ends. So think about what you could get value-wise by waiting and getting a guy that I feel is going to have more sacks than Kayvon by the end of the season. Once again, you don't have to believe me, but 70% hit rate last year. I do the research. I know what I'm talking about. I see what I see, and this is how I feel. But that's just the NFC. So we're going to kick off next week, and we're going to start in the AFC, and we'll look at those defensive players. And there are a few that I'm very excited about. I can't wait to share my thoughts on them with you guys. But until then, remember to set your cue in case you lose internet. You do not want to end up with a kicker in the 4th round, and you do not want to end up with a quarterback that's just going to make you sad. Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, Russell Wilson, any of those, not great ideas. But remember, till next week, defense wins fantasy.